In my experience, there's an easy way and a hard way to get seven figures, and it all revolves around this image right here. So in today's video, I'm going to explain what this image is, obviously, and how you can implement the strategies that surgeons use to blow your agency up to seven figures and to do it in a way that's sustainable and won't require 15 hours a day of your work. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Jimmy. Everyone calls me Uncle Jimmy, and I've been running my agency, My Online Guy, now for over 8.5 years. And I'm also a service delivery coach over at Easy Grow, which is Charlie Morgan's course. You've probably heard of him. And in that time, I've helped over 500 agency owners absolutely crush their service delivery so they can keep clients forever. So if you want to learn more about that, make sure to check out the school group in the description below. Okay, so you're probably thinking, Jimmy, what the hell does being a surgeon have to do with running a marketing agency? And it's all got to do with the mindset of a private surgeon. And that's what I want to talk about today. So before we get into the meat of this topic, I just want to plant the seed of an idea in your head. So there is a reason why private surgeons are so filthy rich. You don't see a poor private surgeon, and generally they're the guys that are driving around Rodeo Hills in their Bugattis and things like that. Some of these private surgeons are making $10, $15 million a year, and there's a reason why they're able to do it. It's because most private surgeons have learned the art of force multiplication. And I'm going to explain how we can take advantage of the same thing as agency owners, especially when we're starting out and we're trying to get our traction between 10,000 and 25K. This is super important. So I think we can all agree that media buyers and customer facing roles like sales reps and appointment setters are expensive to an agency. One of the biggest costs you're going to find when you're running your SMMA or marketing agency is that labor is your single biggest cost, and media buyers are some of the most expensive people you will have in your business. And the reason for that is just because a good media buyer that can actually do the work and think for themselves and come up with ideas is in demand. It's supply and demand. If you're a media buyer and you can get really good results, you can charge $50, $60, $70, $100 an hour, and there'll be people all over the place willing to pay that. It goes the same for sales reps and customer facing roles. If you have a good sales rep in your team, you're going to be paying them a lot of money that you could have potentially kept if you had mainly developed strategies around how you can force multiply yourself within your business. And I see a lot of agency owners, the first thing they want to do is like delegate that stuff off, like the media buyer responsibilities and the sales responsibilities. Normally it's a pain avoidance thing. They just like doing the media buying, or they find it overwhelming to learn how to do the media buying themselves, or at least learn the foundation. And the same with sales. Not everyone is cut out to do sales, so they want to avoid the pain by delegating off responsibility. But honestly, when you're starting out and when you're starting up and scaling up and starting to become mature as an agency, you need to know how to do this stuff for yourself. And there's a really important reason for that, which I'm going to cover off further in this video. And now there's generally two paths you can take as a marketing agency. You can take the path of finding specialists and having less of them, and these people, and finding more experienced people to work with you and maybe paying a little bit more. Or you can take the path, which I'm going to share, which doesn't require as skilled of people. Now, I personally prefer the path that I'm going to suggest, which is the whole surgeon method, mainly because there's less chance of inheriting bad habits from someone that's super established and experienced, and less chance of you getting taken for a ride by someone with a lot of experience, especially if you haven't done this bit where you should be learning it yourself. If you haven't done that bit, you're just opening yourself to getting taken for a ride, because they're just going to be able to say things to you that makes sense because they know what they're talking about, but maybe aren't going to get you the results you need, specifically when it comes to what you've promised for clients and things like that. And I want to emphasize that there's actually not that much difference between you and a private surgeon. I know obviously job-wise there is, and the respect surgeons have in the community is way different, but like in the way you should be thinking about your agency as the owner of the agency, you should be acting like a private surgeon, especially in the early stages. It changes a little bit when you get into that key stage 3 and 4, when you're making 70, 80K, 100K a month. You become like the director of surgery, if you will. But when you're in the trenches, 25 to say 50K a month, especially, you are going to have to act like the surgeon. And there's two ways to do that. You either act like a surgeon that works in an operating theater in a public hospital, or you work as a private surgeon that makes bucket loads of money because they just know how to force multiply, which we're going to cover off right now. Okay, so let's bring up this image again. I showed it at the start, but it probably made no sense to you. What this is an example of how a private surgery and a private practice is laid out. So if you're let's say you're a plastic surgeon and you just focus on doing breast implants, say for instance, The thing is, most private surgeries only have one, maybe two surgeons, but most private surgeries only have one surgeon. And for a private surgeon to make money, they have to be physically doing the work, right? So they have to be physically doing breast implants day in, day out to make the money that supports their lifestyle. Now, as a private surgeon, how do you make more money when you are the one that physically has to do it? There's legal requirements where the surgeon has to physically do the surgery itself. They can't just delegate that off. But they can in a way, and that's what they've learned how to do over a longer period of time. Obviously, surgery's been around for a very long time compared to marketing. So this concept is quite common in surgeries, dentist surgeries, doctor surgeries, places where there's a highly specialized person that is trying to maximize their dollar per hour by force multiplication. So this is how it generally works in a surgery. Okay, so generally a surgery will have anywhere up to 1 to 10 operating theaters, but generally they're in a circle. The operating theaters look like that. So you have operating theater 1, 2, 3, and 4. And basically in each one of those surgeries, there is a pod of people. And the pod may consist of a couple of nurses, maybe a junior doctor, and like assistants. And that will consider the pod. So each one of these has a pod. So there's 4 pods in this surgery. And basically what happens in a private surgery is the doctor basically goes in here, and then he goes into there, and he does that all day. And you're probably wondering how he's able to do that. The thing is with surgery, the surgeon only has to do a very specific part of the surgery legally. And that is like physically putting the implant into the body. Everything else within the surgery can be done by other people. So in these pods, while the doctor is in here doing his bit, in this pod, they're prepping the patient. They're putting an anesthetic in them so they get knocked out. They're doing the actual opening up of the person. They're getting it prepped. So when he's done in here, he literally moves into this room, puts the implants in, and then this surgery is doing the same thing that this one's doing. So they've got the person in there, they're prepping them, they're getting them ready to go. And as soon as the surgeon leaves this one, these guys are closing them up. They're like doing all the post-operation things. They're doing that in there. And then it's just rinse and repeat. The surgeon walks into here, puts the implants in, goes into this room, puts the implants in this room, goes into this room, puts the implants in this room, and puts the implants in, rinse and repeat. A surgeon can get 30 or 40 breast implants done a day that way. And each one of those surgeries is worth like $10,000. So you think if they're doing 30 of them a day, you can see why these surgeons are driving around in Ferraris and Lamborghinis and have $10 million homes. Because it doesn't matter what all these people cost. Their ROI on their time is so incredible by just force multiplying what they do and only focusing on the things that they have to do and getting everyone else to do other things around them. So if we compare that to a surgeon that maybe only has one operating theater in a small practice, you can see how much more money a surgeon that's set up like this would make compared to a guy who's just a single practice, might have a single team. He has to go in there and open the person up and prep, and he's got to wait for the prep. He's got to wait for them to be closed up, and then they can get the next person in. He may only be able to do 5 people a day. So he's making 6 times less money, and his personal return on his time is quite very low because he's waiting around a lot. So hopefully you get this concept that force multiplication is just optimizing your time to focus on the things that only you can do, and then getting people that are cheaper to do the other things around you. So you're multiplying what you can do as an agency by just delegating responsibility better as an agency owner. Okay, so let's talk about some of the strategies on how you can apply that principle to your marketing agency. So if we literally took the private surgery practice that we just looked up above, all you would be doing in your agency is if you were the surgeon, the specialist surgeon that had to do specific stuff because you probably just can't afford to hire a media buyer, say, for instance, then you would just be swapping the nursing staff and the junior doctors and things like that for general VAs that come from countries like the Philippines that are like $2 or $3 an hour. That's the equivalent of having nursing teams that do all the prep work and everything for you, so you can just go in and do the work that you need to do. And I understand there's going to be a portion of you out there that go, I have to do the media buyer because I'm the only one that can do it. And I don't disagree with you. It's actually very hard to find a good media buyer that is a general VA, say, for instance. But the way you get around that is to do the same things that the surgeons do. you need to think about these high value services that you have to do for your clients, like media buying, say, for instance, as like big tasks that can be audited and broken down into micro tasks. And these micro tasks might be 5 or 10 minutes at a time. A very good example of this is like going through each client's ad accounts. You would think that you have to do that, but actually any old VA can do that if they're shown what to look for. And then they can generate a report that you just look at, and that might save you 10, 15 minutes a day just by doing that. And I know you're going to stand there and go, oh, it's only 15 minutes, but it adds up. You think about it. If you manage to save 4 lots of 15 minutes, that's an hour of your day that you can focus to increase your capacity, or you can just focus on revenue generating activities, or focus on scaling. There's plenty of things you can do when you have the time. And so the goal is to audit your day, work out the things that only you can do because you are the surgeon, you're the only one that can put the implants in. And then you find all the things that anyone can do and you record yourself doing them with Loom, and you delegate that responsibility off to a general VA. Now, there's a whole strategy to hiring general VAs that are able to do this stuff. And I've got that in the actual course. If you join the group, you'll see it in there. But that is the secret. A lot of people get stuck in this process because they try and take out big chunks of their day. They're like, oh, I want to give all the media buying off to someone else. When actually, if they just did the bits that only they can do in the media buying, which might be coming up with creatives and copy, it might be the fault finding part of it, literally everything else around that can be done by general VAs if they're just shown how to do it. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. And why it works so well is because it scales way better than having a team of expensive media buyers with all different skill levels and all different preconceived ideas about how to do ads. You can train an army of VAs to do it exactly how you want it to do. So you can make sure that you maintain consistency with your service that you're offering to your client. And now what I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to show you an example of what this looks like from a pod perspective and like a hiring perspective with an agency, what a typical agency structure that's like focused around this actually looks like. All right, guys. So what we're looking at here is a typical SMMA marketing agency structure. Now, this is our actual structure. It's just a smaller scale of it. Obviously, our structure is different because we have more pods. But effectively, this is what our agency runs like. And it's a great example of how to structure it around this whole force multiplication, you being the surgeon methodology. So let's go to the top of the pole here. So generally, you have a owner or / operations manager in this main role. So that would be me in this case, or like you in this case. My agency is slightly structured differently, but like you in this case. And then I would always recommend that you have a general executive virtual assistant. That should almost be your first hire in pretty much every situation. This person is going to have in fact, one of the best understandings of your business outside of you and your partners. And this person here should be the first hire that you hire. From there, you're going to look at your pods in 3 separate categories. So you have your sales pod, you have your fulfillment pod, and then you have your like admin online business management pod, right? So let's look at the sales pod for a minute. So basically how it works, right? You have your sales manager, which in this case, maybe you may be the sales manager at the very start. That might be a hire. This might be a first world person, someone from a first world country as you develop and get bigger. And then what you do is you have people underneath them that are from the Philippines. So you have appointment setters that feed into a sales pod, which essentially consists of a couple of sales reps. So these appointment setters are generally going to be people, third-party people that's paying like $25 a lead, $30 a lead for. These are going to be fed into a sales pod. And then you're going to have 2 sales reps, which in a lot of cases are you most of the time. As you're smaller, these 3 roles here are probably you. And then as you get bigger, you might start to hire in there. Just depends on the volume. And then you have your sales support assistant, which is a general VA. So this is like the nurse, and this is like the surgeon in this case. And these are like outside contractors coming to work for you if we were using the surgery analogy. So you have a sales support assistant, and you have 1 sales support assistant per a pod of 3. And then so each sales pod may consist of, if you had another sales pod, it may consist of something like that, where you have 2 reps getting fed by 3 appointment setters with a sales manager. Or you may have it so you have more reps under 1 sales manager and more sales support assistants helping them. So that's like a sales pod. The main bulk of where you're going to get the benefit of working like a surgeon with force multiplication is in your sales, in your service delivery and fulfillment. So if we look at the service delivery, side of things. A lot of these roles at the start, like these media buying manager roles, they won't exist. These are things as you scale up that you need. But effectively, your media buyer assistants are general VAs, and they're basically hired from the ground up as general VAs, and you're giving them responsibilities as a project manager and operations. You're giving them responsibilities that you can delegate off those little micro tasks from the media buying side of things. And as they develop and get better, and as you scale up, you'll work out how much capacity you have. So these media buying pods are based on capacity. So that's a client delivery pod there, and it's based on capacity. Basically, as you move up and you start to need more capacity, you're going to end up needing to make one of these your manager. And what you do is you hire from the bottom up. So you'd have your media buyer assistant. They might be working with you for 6-7 months, and then say, okay, we need another media buyer. So you might promote this person here into this role and give them more responsibility of managing the day-to-day of these people. And then you would just bring in someone underneath. You've developed all the processes already. They can literally slot into that role from underneath, from the street, basically, with no experience. This media buyer manager has experience working with you and your processes. And that's where that's really good. Then what happens is you have a VA that supports the management roles. So you can see here we have a client delivery support role for this media manager. So the media manager's role is to focus on getting the results for their specific pot of clients. And then you have a service client delivery support role, which is there to support the media buyer if they need specific things from the client, or they need to get information to the client. They can be the sort of congruence between that and the client. Or you can have account managers which do the same thing, but account managers are more like reporting and things like that. This is, okay, we need to get this from the client. We need to get this information from the client. We need an answer on this. That's what we use this role for. The account manager is more like reporting, and if the client has questions that we need answered, then that goes to our account manager. And as you can see, you work out how big your pods are going to be. And then if you get more clients, or you want to take on more clients, you just build a second pod and a third pod and a fourth pod. And you just keep the building pods of like media manager, media buyer assistants, and then one client delivery support person can support several media managers. Like you might have 7 pods. You only need one client delivery support person who's a general VA to be able to support all that. And then your account managers, same deal. When you hire an account manager, you're hiring off the street into an assistant role. From the assistant role, they move into a management role, and then so on and so forth. You should only ever really need 2 or 3 account one account manager that looks after 2 or 3. I would recommend that you have an account manager for each pod, because your pods might consist of 7 or 8 clients or 12 clients. It really just depends on the size of your agency, but that's like how you would structure this. And then same with the admin assistants. The admin assistants come from the ground. You give them responsibilities. And then as they get better and as you get bigger, you might need more assistants to do different parts of the roles. And then you would turn one of these into their online business manager that becomes like a senior role. So you can see the secret to this is that you basically start from the bottom up with junior roles, and you develop people into more senior roles, because as they get more experience, they can take more of the responsibility off your plate to actually deliver results. And that's the secret to this. This is how I'm able to run a 7-figure agency and do 2 or 3 hours a day, is that we just have this infrastructure in place so that it's supported. And I'm actually a level above this. There's like another level below this, which has got Cam and Pauline in it. Yeah, this is how we run our business. And it's a super effective way, because most people will just hire for this role. And then it really severely limits how many clients they can take on, because these people are 10 times more. If you just hire a media buyer that's really experienced straight off the street, this person is 10 times more an hour than this people. You can get 10 media buyers. You could probably get 7 media buyer assistants with a media buyer manager for the same price as one person. So that gives you 7 times more capacity if you do it this way. And this is how we run it. So there's a couple of questions that I generally get asked when I show people this concept, and I'm just about to go and answer those questions right now. Now, hopefully this concept has resonated with you, and you're going to go now and look at your days and work out which little bit of micro work can be handed off to a $3 an hour VA that they can do, which frees up more of your time to generate higher revenues. But if you're not, let's just talk about some of the typical questions people have about this concept. Why don't you just hire a media buyer or a sales rep from the very start? And I appreciate that's like the typical consensus of the marketing community and marketing agency community, is like you get your first client, then hire a media buyer. I can't think of any worse advice than that. Not only is it bad because you don't actually learn how to deliver the results yourself? You shouldn't be selling something you don't know how to do yourself. That's just my personal philosophy on it. You just open yourself to getting taken advantage of. If you knew absolutely nothing about cars and you walked into a used car yard, they can literally tell you anything about that car and you have to believe them. It's the same principle here. If you hire a media buyer and you don't know anything about creating Facebook ads, they can literally tell you whatever they want and you just have to believe them because you can't hold them to task and go, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. The other part of it is, let's say you do hire a media buyer at the very start and they don't deliver results. They just don't deliver results and then they disappear because they're embarrassed. Who's left holding the bag? Ultimately, who is responsible? And you don't want to be left holding the bag after paying someone and not be able to fix it yourself. That's the other reason I don't recommend hiring a media buyer or a sales rep for that matter at the very start. At least if you hire a general VA and teach them the little things, you can mold them and turn them into the person that you need them to be that works perfectly for your agency. And that's super valuable because those people, when you mold them and meld them, they learn how you want it done. And then when they become managers after a while and you start to scale up and you build your pods out, then you can get them to make sure they teach it the way you want it taught. That way you can maintain consistency, and it's way easier to scale something that's consistent than something that is inconsistent. And that's what I found with media buyers especially, is that they all have different ways of doing it. And because they have different ways, the process has changed, which adds complexity and reduces your margins as an agent owner. The next typical question I hear is that only I can do the media buying or only I can do the sales. I can't teach anyone else to do that. That is a pain avoidance thing, and it's a bit of a cop-out, to be fair. Anyone can be taught anything if enough effort is put in, right? So don't think that because you're doing the sales at the moment that it's impossible to teach someone. If you're not able to teach someone, it's probably because you just don't have the right processes in place to be able to teach them. So if you're saying only you can do the media buying, it's probably because you haven't looked at it deep enough and gone, how can I delegate some of this responsibility off so I can start the baby steps to training someone on how to do it the way I want it done so that they can eventually take it over and get better than I can. And that's what we found with our virtual assistants that we've hired over the years, is that we've got some of them that are, I would argue, are better at Facebook ads than me because they've learned the way I do it and then just built on top of it with their own personality and jazz. So this is a cop-out response. It's basically a way of avoiding breaking down tasks and the hard work of delegating responsibility. But trust me when I say, when you start to scale up and you start to have all the pressures of operations as well on top of service delivery and all the pressures of handling multiple 20, 30 clients at once, you just need to learn this at the start, because if you're carrying this bag of having to do media buying as well as carrying the operations bag on your shoulder, you're going to have a pretty tough time scaling up to 7 figures. And then another question I get is, I'm all on board with this concept. I'm all on board with what you're talking about here, but how do I find a VA to hire for this kind of role, for this general VA role? It's a fantastic question. And it's a question I used to get asked a lot, but I made this course, and it's in that Service Delivery Kings group that I linked in the description, on like how you do this specifically. And this was taken partially out of that, but it shows you the process of how you hire these people, how you delegate the responsibility, how you give them tasks. And then it shows you how to turn them into managers, how to manage their performance, everything you would need to know about hiring a VA and scaling an agency through remote teams is in that course. Now, it doesn't teach you how to find a media buyer. It doesn't teach you how to find a sales rep. It teaches you this concept, taking complex tasks, breaking them down into smaller bits so you can hire people for $3 an hour and have an army of general VAs that do the work, that become your future managers in your business. Trust me when I say, if you want to maintain margins when you scale, you have to do it this way, because it's way too expensive to hire first world people to do every role. As you scale, you will need people from first world countries to be upper management and things like that. But while you're scaling up, you can use VAs to get you a good chunk of the way. So if you want to learn more about that course, go and check it out in the school group, in the classroom section. There's a bit of a landing page there that explains it, and it might be a fit for you. So guys, that's it. Hopefully I was able to explain this concept well enough, because it was a game changer for my agency. You got to remember that I've scaled to 7 figures twice in my career, and the first time was not pleasant. It was because I didn't actually know this, and it's only after I scaled the second time that I learned this. And if you're curious about that video, you can find that video over here, because I break down the 4 key stages of scaling an agency to 7 figures and what I learned having to do it twice. So guys, Make sure to subscribe, make sure to join the school groups, completely free, and I'll catch you in the next video.